I am delighted this week to be joined by Ness, Knight, an explorer and conservationist. The theme for these chats is all about not following the rules and the spirit of doing things differently. Cheers.
Cheers. That's really nice. That's so much easier than having it neat. You know, I'm just sitting here telling other people how to do the thing that I always wanted to do, and I'm not doing it.
And talk to me a bit more about some of the specifics behind the conservation and environment things that you've done.
I found that it all began really when I went to Namibia, and I was traversing through some of the most arid, dry and desolate wilderness on the planet. And I didn't do too much research when I was going there. I was cycling solo, and I assumed from old Google imagery that I would be able to find water sources along the way, because that's what it showed, you know. And these images, I didn't really clock the fact that they were 10, 15 years old, and it looked pretty incredible, and there was little green oases everywhere, and I thought, fantastic. And I set off, and you know, being the naive person at the time that I was, I arrived there to what had been a country that was in 4 or 5 years grip of drought.
Wow.
And I hadn't asked the question about what is the environment like now.
Right.
And as you know, we're in a world that is changing very, very dramatically, very quickly. Yeah. But what I saw was, with the wilderness and the wildlife, the indigenous communities, the Himba, they are nomadic. Yeah. They were supposed to be quite far to the north, and they were, the only signs of them really were these deserted old villages and run down little shacks and a few bones lying around. And I thought, okay, that's the first one. And that kept happening. And eventually further south, quite far further south, where they shouldn't really have been that far south, you know, for the first ones that I'd find. And they said that, you know, the entire environment had changed completely. Right. And I also had not seen wildlife, big wildlife. And that's because all the waterholes had dried up, all the rivers had dried up, and everyone had been pushed further south. And that journey was supposed to be about mind and body and me pushing my limits, and it ended up about something entirely different.
And so the last 6 months must have been pretty weird for you. How have you been keeping yourself occupied, and what's in the future?
I looked back at all my expeditions, and I'd recently just come back from survival training with the San Bushmen in northeast Namibia. And they really just captured my imagination when it came to their connection with nature. And what you take is only what you need, and what you give back, if you can, is tenfold. And I thought, hang on a second, you know, this is a recurring theme everywhere that I go, into these remote places that are the only places that are still pristine. Yeah. Something different is happening there than what we are doing when I come back home. And just over the last 6 months, 2 and 2 was put together, and I started thinking, hang on a sec, I want to farm. But I don't just want to farm, I want to get into organic regenerative agriculture. And so that is my journey of the last 6 months. Is my partner Jake and I are looking for a farm somewhere in the UK, and we want to find a farm that has a decent amount of acreage that has already been depleted and exploited. Yeah. And regenerative agriculture is about the soil being recovered, and it's not just about becoming carbon neutral, but if you do it right, you can actually sequester carbon back into the ground.
And then it becomes this wonderful joining of two of the issues, the lack of biodiversity and carbon and global warming, and actually one thing can provide the solution to these two, what had been thought of as slightly separate sustainability issues. And I feel like the regenerative organic movement has been very strong in the States and maybe not yet quite so strong in the UK. So amazing to hear that you're going to kind of grab that and run with it. And I have been along that journey of organic agriculture a little bit in the last 3 years, because we buy only organic barley for the whiskey. And so we've started to get to know those farmers and some of the challenges that they face, but also some of the benefits. And you go to those farms and it just feels completely different to the farms that I grew up around, which are kind of traditional farms. You know, you've got birds and bees and flowers and all of these amazing things. And one of the things that we have noticed as we've made the whiskey is actually, I think we get a lot more depth of flavour to the end product.
I can 100% believe that.
Yeah, well, I think every business these days has a responsibility to do what they can, basically, to contribute to all of those issues that we were just talking about. So,
completely.
Well, what a lovely positive note to end on. I'm so excited that you found something, that something good has come out of the last 6 months as well, because, as you say, it's been a tough period for everyone. So
It has. No, I'm hugely excited. There's a lot of work ahead.
Yeah, a lot. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ness. It's been such an inspiring conversation about doing things differently and thinking about the world in a different way.
It's been incredible. Thanks for having me.
If you want to follow Ness on her adventures, she's on Instagram at Ness_night. Cheers.